the architecture layers. You also need strong governance. I've already told you that. That should consist of a maturity model for architecture, a methodology. Leadership is very important. Jerry was talking about the difference between a leader and a manager, right? Structures, policies, and procedures. For digital government to succeed, it needs to be supported by policies and procedures. There are many today, technically, I can have digital signatures, right? You agree? Yes or no? But in many countries, digital signature is not accepted in the legal system. The court of law still requires a physical signature. So you can see the difference between what architecture and technology can do and where the policies are not in place. Okay, now that needs to be supported by different areas of IT management: assurance, security, risk, service delivery, governance, standards, performance, investment, open data, shared services, and cybersecurity. You have seen some of these in Jerry's slide also. So these are individual building blocks. So I'm calling the first layer drivers, things that drive the strategy of the government. These are amplifiers, which means things that make these drivers more effective. They amplify the impact. And enablers. You can see these enablers are horizontal lines. Why? Because they are important for every block above them. You have procurement, you have project and quality management, you have change and communication management, and innovation. So for a government to do a good quality, high quality, world-class architecture, all of these blocks are important. Typically what I use this for is I do an assessment and say, okay, you may have some blocks, but maybe you're weak here, and you're weak here. That's a heat map. And then come up with a strategy to address those gaps. Okay? All right. I think you get the point. This then feeds into an enterprise architecture maturity model. If you see that, one of the critical blocks in the previous slide was the maturity model here. All right, so I'm showing you a snapshot of what a maturity model looks like from an architecture perspective. Okay, so initially your architecture is ad hoc. It goes into development. It is written down, but nobody uses it. Then enterprise architecture is measured. So there are KPIs around architecture. It is used to optimize business outcomes. That's how enterprise architecture should ideally mature through the journey of the enterprise. In this case, it could be government. And there are few things that organizations have to do, governments have to do to improve their maturity. I'll not go into the details, but I think you get the point. All right. Now, based on the model, which I showed you earlier, this model, I have identified certain areas which are enablers and which are inhibitors, which means these are the things that will make your architecture succeed, and these are the things that will make your architecture fail. Remember that in a government, in an enterprise, you will have both. You cannot eliminate these areas simply because they are, making your architecture fail. You cannot eliminate them. The thing you can do is you can ensure that these things dominate over these things. Your enablers are stronger than your inhibitors. And that's the reason why you need a strategy to figure out, what is the intensity of the impact, what is the likelihood that this enabler or this inhibitor will occur, and what is the rating, whether it is a strong rating or a weak rating. So this actually is a table, it's an assessment table. Based on this assessment table, you can identify 4 quadrants. This is what the 4 quadrants are. So you can see the inhibitors, okay, and the enablers, accelerators on top. You can see this here. When inhibitor and both are low, it means that your maturity is very low of the architecture program. When in this case, what happens is your inhibitors are high and your enablers are low. It means that such programs are dominated by the inhibitors, and therefore they will not survive. They will die. The ideal situation is this. When your enablers are high but your inhibitors are low. This is the ideal situation for them to go. And then obviously there are other things. Based on this, you can find out how governments move in their architecture journey. So these are all the failure scenarios, which means the government or enterprise starts with an architecture initiative or a program. However, for various reasons, which I showed you earlier, they are discontinued. Okay, these come from the previous slide, the steps. Okay, and these are all the success scenarios. Of course, the ideal situation would be start with the program, go on to the optimal, right, where the program is expanded. But many governments, many enterprises are unable to do that. What that means is this. If you go back to the previous slide, it means start here, go here. Very easy. But most governments will not do that. Most enterprises will not do that, because it's possible that you start here, go up here, and then come down here. That way. There are various permutation and combinations to go through the journey. However, the important point here is that all of these are successful scenarios. You can see that, expanded or sustained, versus these. These are all failure scenarios, discontinued. The best one is highlighted, so I've put a star there, so that's the best one, but most organizations will not achieve that in the maturity model. All right, so it gives you a general sense of how do you think about architecture when you're planning an architecture journey. But the key point I'd like to tell you is that, which is, I've almost come to the end of my presentation, is that it is hard. It is not easy to do architecture. That is something that you have to keep in your mind, and that's why strategic thinking is so important. All right, I think this is my last slide. This is precisely what I've done today. See the whole picture. So I've showed you the entire system model. Identify connections between the different parts of the system. In this case, the system was the enterprise itself. I've shown you the connections, the models. Engage in different perspectives, take different perspectives. It's a customer perspective, citizen perspective, supplier perspective, so on and so forth. Recognize that all models are wrong, but some are useful. Okay, these are all models, right? Which means these are an approximation of reality. So technically they are wrong, but they give you the visibility of the whole. Therefore, you can come up with the strategy for your architecture journey. Consider timescales, both long and short term. You cannot say my architecture is going to take 10 years to give you the result. Nobody has that much patience. Okay, so you have to balance between 3 months, 1 quarter, and 10 years. Both are equally important. Look for patterns. I've shown you 8 patterns, 4 successful and 4 unsuccessful. I've shown you 8 patterns. See which one is working for you, and then keep learning, right? This is precisely what strategic thinking is all about. Because there's one thing that I want you to take back today is, you have the slides with you, but this is important. Enterprise architecture, EA, is done to build better enterprises, not merely to build better IT systems. There must be a reason why it is called enterprise architecture, right? Otherwise, I could have called it IT architecture, right? So just keep that in mind. And with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. No, I have this. I have the column mic, yeah.
Because and still have some time, and so if any question about this, the presentations. I think in the first lecture, and Dr. Rufman give us some insight about the strategy and business IT alignment. And this kind of issue, and is very key concerns of the IT managers globally, and for a long time. And that means it's critical issues, and every business and organization, and even our government, were facing. And I think the EA, or just we call it just like an enterprise architecture, and it's just try to give us a methodology to deal with and how to and implement and a strategy alignment for a business or for an organization. And today, Dr. Saha give us some sample, but this is all based on the case of the government. But we can see and feel some insight or some lessons from this case. So if any would like to share some ideas, okay?
Dr. Saha, thank you very much for the beautiful presentation. My question is, you mentioned Kodak, earlier on.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that part of the reason that they failed is they couldn't keep up with the technology. Or actually, they invented the digital photography, but somehow they just couldn't grow out of it. So that plus the ideas or the principles from the the innovator's dilemma, because of a big old organization have hard time because the differences in the value chains and so on make it very hard. What do you think about that, and in terms of building an enterprise architecture to face these kind of new disruptive technologies?
No, this is an absolutely valid comment. In fact, as you rightly said, Kodak was one of the earlier inventors of the digital technology, but somebody in the organization, somebody very senior in the organization, decided that that digital technology could disrupt their business. And I always say, right, if you're successful in one way of doing things, that breeds failure. Right? Because, as Simon is aware of this, Singapore has been I've lived in Singapore for 14 years. As a city, as you know, Singapore has been very successful in the past 40, 50 years, right? It has almost transformed itself. But now the problem, the dilemma is, what do? They are already number one. What do you do, right? So there is a big danger, and because they have been successful in certain way of doing things, now they cannot change. And this is precisely what happened with Kodak. They were so successful in the chemical-based business, film technology, they just couldn't decide that they had to adopt the digital technology, otherwise they couldn't anticipate what it would bring, right? So this is where enterprise architecture comes in, right? So the way I talk about is, in fact, I showed you the 4 characteristics, right? One of the key characteristics about enterprises is that things will be ambiguous and things will change. When I say doing enterprise architecture, this is not the old Soviet-style USSR 5-year plan and then nothing will change in the 5 years. Right? You plan and then you execute. No mid-course correction. So my philosophy for enterprise architecture is, while you do planning, you do execute, but in between you have sense and respond. Right? So, and one of the things in my digital government, in fact, if you remember, the lower layer was innovation ecosystem. So it's important for large organizations, therefore, to encourage disruptive innovations. Having said that, I can tell you, there have been many Kodaks before Kodaks, and there will be many Kodaks after Kodak also. The interesting thing about management is that we do not learn from past failures. Just because Kodak has happened doesn't mean that in future no organization is going to fail. They will continue to fail. This is a pattern. That is the very essence of enterprises. All right? Yes.
Okay. If any question?
We can take it during the panel discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the EL methodology was just to deal with another very key issues of one of the dimensions of the strategy alignment, and it means the integrations. Because so many organizations would like to build up the layer information system for supporting the layer operations, and this is a kind of the resources allocated, and just like and every system was built just like the stop pipe. And just like one system and overlay too much with another one. And so this will cause a lot of the issues about the inconsistent or just like not and a lot of cooperations cost. And another way, and if you just like allocate your resources and for just like redo the task you have done. And so you will just cause another and resources and the wasting the issues kind of. So EA is trying to give us a blueprint, and we can build up your holistic perspective in your system operations and planning. So I think that means a lot. And when we want to implement the strategy alignment, or just like a business IT alignment, and I think that is very important issues, and we got to take care of. Okay. If no any other question, and it's about time to take a rest. Maybe we have a break here. Okay, thank you. And yeah, thank you, Dr. Saha. Thank you.
好，各位贵宾，大家好。那我们现在这个中间的休息时间，外面有水果的餐盒，各位可以在外面先享用。那顺便提醒大家，3点半到3点50分是我们那个 APP 活动的最后一个 break 的时间。如果各位还有没有完成的这个部分的话，可以在这个休息时间完成。那我们3点50分活动会截止，然后会进行抽奖。好，在闭幕的时间会进行抽奖。好，谢谢大家。等一下我们3点50分再回来哈。